this is one where it's like the oligarchs, the rich people, when they have the Supreme Court in their pocket, they don't give a shit about gay marriage. They give a shit about antitrust law, though.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Before You Speak podcast. I'm your host, Derek Peterson, just a father, husband, working class American trying to figure some shit out. And here's my co-host.
Hey, Derek, thank you. I'm Elwyn. I used to be an attorney, used to work in small businesses, own a small business now. But I've got a couple of girls married here in Austin, and I take in an awful lot of information about what's going on and hopefully can help, provide some clarity, and talking about it helps me be clarified about it.
All right, let's jump into the nuggets in the news this week. We will let's start with yours this week with Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, see ya.
Dude, her
Jewish
farewell
face lasers took her out.
her farewell tour has been epic.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's the farewell tour that most interests me because, I think great. And I think it's very interesting not being in MAGA to see what is a rupture within MAGA. And she was a pretty leading voice in that movement. And to see the split with Trump and for her to just be like, I'm out. What's been really interesting about the farewell tour, though, is the sane washing that goes on when this stuff happens, right? It's like, I'm delighted that she is out there now saying that, calling for executions of your political rivals is a bad idea, and that jumping onto every conspiracy theory maybe doesn't work out well in the end. Like, great. But to everybody interviewing her, she has a 6-year unblemished track record of saying the most inflammatory, batshit crazy, racist, anti-Semitic crap. And that she saw the light on Epstein, meaning that she had the sane response of thinking that what happened with Epstein was just abhorrent and should be called out. Like, that's all she did. She had a sane response.
Yep.
That does not wipe away 6 years of just cuckoo bananas garbage that has helped bring this country down. So whatever her rehabilitation tour is, I feel like there should be a rule. For every year that you're insane, you have to be sane for 2 years. So we need 12 years of sane Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she can be conservative. She doesn't have to be liberal. I'm not selfish about that.
Yeah.
She can be a sane, conservative Republican for 12 years. And then I believe she should be allowed back into public discourse.
That's dude. She keeps saying that she's not running for anything else, or she's just stepping out. But anybody that switches this hard, they're trying to pander to the other side a little bit. I think she's starting to realize she has to be a little more moderate to get what she wants, which is probably a higher position in the government, if not the presidency. So I think she's gearing up for something, if I had to guess.
She's at least tuning the dial and seeing what comes in clear.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing I wanted to briefly touch on today was Doge disbanding, which was interesting to me because, and I think they had a contract that was supposed to go for 2 years, it ended 17 months early or something like that, or
I think it's 8 months early. I think it was like a 16. It was supposed to end sometime in 2026, but it's still half the time.
Yeah, still cut down short, which is interesting because, all of the savings that they claimed, and I didn't get into the minutia of all the reported numbers because I don't trust any of them at all, of what the government was actually saving by using Doge. But I do know that there are, tens and if not more, tens of thousands of jobs that have been lost for, middle class families. And specifically, the hardest part about this for me was that the the federal government is the highest employer of veterans and disabled people. And being married to somebody that's disabled, this is I didn't understand before how important these jobs are. Like, these jobs in some cases are the only way that some people can really get like good work, quality work that with good benefits that they can actually live a decent life on. So the hardest part for me watching what was happening with Doge from the start was just these, basically eradicating all of these middle class jobs that were very necessary, for the sake of, guys like Elon Musk who, collect government subsidies to the tune of, what it could have cost to employ all of these people for like 100 years. So it that kind of stuff drives me nuts. But I mean, ultimately, I'm glad Doge disbanded. I don't know that it was anything more than like Elon. It kind of feels like Elon just went in, fired a bunch of people that were basically going to, oversee anything that he was working on, collect a bunch of data that that nobody else is going to have access to, and then split. So I'm like, I mean, if that was the goal, I mean, he wins. So
Yeah. No, I
yeah,
think what you said at the end is to me like what the Doge project always was meant to be.
yeah,
Fire the heads of all the agencies that are investigating Elon Musk. The amount of data, I don't think people care enough about the fact that probably every bit of data that the government has about every single one of us has been scraped and sold off to like Palantir and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. Uh, I remember when Doge started, like I was talking to a friend of mine who, didn't know he was MAGA. He was like saying trying to convince me that he wasn't. And I was like, man, I don't think you can trust Elon Musk. Don't put all your eggs in his basket. I'll never forget what he said. He said, I think Elon Musk is a genius, and I think this will be his Mona Lisa. The unfortunate thing is that I'm incapable of these conversations for too long. So now the guy doesn't talk to me anymore. But I really want to be like, hey, remember this?
yeah.
How do you like me now?
I
Uh,
was gonna say that sounds about right.
yeah. So this will be his Mona Lisa. All right.
Well, if it, I mean, we've yet to find out, and who knows? Maybe at some point he's using all of our information against us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
So,
and we saved no money. Our deficit has gone up. Expenditures are higher this year than they were last year. The whole project about reducing spending's up. Waste, fraud, and abuse worse than ever. Corruption worse than ever. Deficit up. Just a
it's
scam. The whole thing was a scam.
yeah, it's interesting to me that MAGA goes so hard against, the surveillance state and all of these, crazy conspiracy theories, yet allows the richest man in the world to go in and scrape all of our data and basically start the process of creating a surveillance state. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's mind blowing from the other side, but, maybe I'm missing something. We'll find
No,
out.
you're exactly right. Everything that they're afraid of, and we
Yeah.
talked about this with Epstein too, right? Like
Yep.
everything that they are afraid of, every conspiracy, every invasion of privacy is happening now by the people that they vote for, and they
Yep.
just can't bring themselves to connect the dots. Incredible.
It's mind blowing. So, well, let's get into our main topic today. We are going to discuss the media's responsibility, and to like around how it delivers the news and opinions, and then obviously our responsibility as people consuming the news and opinions, how we're meant to process those. And one of the thing that came to my mind as I was thinking about this today was, when I was working in the music industry, I worked for a guy named Irving Azoff for a number of years. And while I was working for Irving Azoff, he ran a company called Frontline Music Management. And while I was there, the majority shares of Frontline Music were purchased by Ticketmaster. And Ticketmaster decided to name Irving Azoff the CEO and president of Ticketmaster at the time. So we went from being a music management company to being Ticketmaster, over the course of a few months. Then he took Ticketmaster, uh, and him and Michael Rapino merged Ticketmaster and Live Nation together. And when this was all coming down the pipeline, this was all being pitched as this is going to be the best thing for artists. It's going to allow us to collaborate, the promoter side of the music industry along with ticketing and make the entire process more cohesive. The bill of goods being sold to the public is all, this is going to benefit everybody. Well, fast forward to now, this, they're trying to break these companies up again because there's, what the actual byproduct was that all the littler companies were squashed and artists aren't getting paid anything like what they were told they were going to get paid. There's hidden fees. Everybody's pissed off about everything, right? And so as we like how when I was thinking about this whole topic of corporate media, I immediately connected that to what's going on with the Ellisons. Larry Ellison, David Ellison, they just bought David Ellison merged Skydance with which is the big film company that does all of like the Tom Cruise movies, Mission Impossible movies, stuff like that. Went out and bought Paramount Plus, and now they have a bid in for Warner Brothers. And when you consolidate, there's always this pitch of like, hey, this is going to be better. We're able to do X, Y, and Z. But the underlying theme of this is ultimately feels pretty ugly. Like, feels like it's this grab for control, which was the same as the Live Nation Ticketmaster merger. Like, we're going to squash out the littler guys. We're going to control the narrative, and we're going to basically use this to funnel money to A, the executives, and B, the few artists that will benefit from this are the biggest artists in the world. Basically, the news and a lot of our corporate media is going to essentially be ran by a handful of what looks like to be right wing, Trumpers here from here on moving forward. So, what are your takes on that? What are your thoughts on just corporate media in general at the moment?
Yeah, I think the consolidation aspect of it is probably the thing people pay the least attention to, but is the most important. And it's not that people aren't paying attention to like Barry Weiss taking over CBS, and some of those bigger mergers. They are, but I think you need to go like kind of one level down. And this was all on display when Jimmy Kimmel got fired. You have when it comes to news media, TV news media in particular. You have this setup where you have locally owned affiliates, and they license out to product like Jimmy Kimmel Live or ABC. Well, one of the things that those locally owned affiliates do locally is the news. But now you have, I think, three players around the country that own the vast, vast, vast majority of these local affiliates. So right now, Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which I think is the biggest one or second biggest one,
Yeah, I
is
think you're
trying
right.
to buy EW Scripps, which would put them right around this limit. The FCC actually has a limit that no company can own more than 38% of the affiliate stations. And they're all trying to get that removed for obvious reasons. But who cares? Why is that important? Well, Sinclair exerts a decent amount of editorial control over those news stations. So you can find kind of semi-viral clips of hundreds of news anchors giving a little editorial speech at the end of a broadcast about immigration or the war on Christmas or whatever right-wing talking point needs to be pushed out. And when Sinclair, the larger their reach, the more uniform that voice becomes, the louder that voice becomes, and people actually watch their local news.
Yep.
It seems quaint, but people do. They're still on the air for a reason. So this consolidation that's going on that level serves one purpose and one purpose only, which is to reduce the amount of dissenting opinion or differing opinion. Uh, and they are almost all right wing coded. Sinclair is well known for being a right wing leaning group. I think Kushner has a stake in it.
Yep.
So I think the consolidation at that level with Sinclair, and Scripps, it's not sexy. It doesn't register with people. Uh, but it is really, really, really important because when it comes to what are you seeing on the news, now you have basically, it's not quite state media, but it is one step away
Yeah.
because the owners are having dinner at Mar-a-Lago all the time. And that's who's putting out the editorial spin on things. And we've gone from Cronkite, who people trusted, to a right wing media group, and we know how influential Cronkite can be. So why wouldn't these right wing media groups seek that influence? And they are, and they're achieving it through that conglomeration.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you get into any marketing classes or any kind of sales thing, they tell you have to see the same thing like it's like a certain number of times. I want to say it's like 9 times in a row before it really starts to register with your brain. And I think that the the thing that the right does better than anyone on the left is these coordinated efforts to get their message out, even at the cost of doing things that are illegal, which, if I'm being honest, I think all of this should be squashed, because you're right. I think it was John Oliver on Last Week Tonight that they cut up a bunch of those segments and spliced them together to show, hey, these are all coordinated. Like, these are all supposed to be independently ran, and these are all coordinated efforts of people basically giving out the same exact message all across the country in different to their local channels.
Yeah,
It was local channel.
this is a script. It's a
Yeah.
script, and people, the local newscasters are local. Like, people trust them. People listen to them, and the left. It's just one of these places where the left is living in an idealistic dreamland where they're like, no, facts will come out. The truth shall set you free. And the right is sitting there going, no, the truth is what we say it is. And we're going to buy up all the megaphones so that we're the ones who are saying what it is. And the left is just like, yeah, but Rachel Maddow, like, what? the, the
She's the
right,
one. Rachel
yeah,
Maddow. That's their smoking gun.
that's their one. That's the one that the left has.
That's
So I feel like this consolidation, just the quality's gone down. The honesty and independence of the reporting has gotten worse, and it's just not sexy enough for people to care. And a couple episodes ago, we talked about the Supreme Court. This is one where it's like the oligarchs, the rich people, when they have the Supreme Court in their pocket, they don't give a shit about gay marriage. They give a shit about antitrust law, though.
yes, they do. They will absolutely do whatever they can do to make sure the things that protect their money making endeavors, at all costs. Meanwhile, we're all over here fighting about, straws being paper or not, and that's
Yeah.
that's how they keep us distracted. Um, it's interesting. I was thinking back to what got me into politics. Um, a couple weeks ago, because I'm a huge Jon Stewart fan, huge Colbert fan, and I didn't pay attention to any of this before I started getting into The Daily Show. The Daily Show is ultimately, I started watching it probably around 2004, 2005. And pretty much use The Daily Show as my as my source for news, which ironically enough, it's not a news source. And we have to be careful about what we take away from these things as actual news, even though, like, there's a great book I read called The Great Divorce, and it's C.S. Lewis, who's a Christian writer. It's kind of his take on purgatory, but at the beginning of the book, he prefaces with, like, this is a story. This is not my actual theological views on how these things go. And I kind of feel like oftentimes, like, when I was reading it, I almost forgot that. And oftentimes I would almost take some of it as like he's telling us what heaven and hell are going to be like, which is, and when I watch The Daily Show and the Colbert Report, oftentimes I would take those and digest them as very factual, and they were giving factual, cases in just about every instance they were, or every story they were presenting, but obviously through the lens of, satire and humor. So, what role do media figures play? I feel like there at some point needs to be a overhaul of how we kind of sparse out media in what is actual news and opinion. So whose responsibility do you think that is? And do you think the media figures that are involved in it should be kind of the ones that take the lead on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some responsibility on the part of the media company to identify in some way what is opinion and what is news. But I think it's unrealistic to feel like that distinction will ever make that much of a difference in a world of 24-hour cable news stations. Like, people might know that Hannity is opinion and that Brett Baer right before him is news, but they don't give a shit, right?
Yeah.
They're watching Fox News because they want the Fox News spin on the news, and then they want Hannity to tell them how to think, or why they should be outraged about what they just heard. Um, I so I think that responsibility between identifying opinion versus fact, ultimately, it's an awareness issue for the consumer. Uh, where, like, John Stewart's a great example, like, because a lot of people were getting their news from John Stewart.
Hmm.
And I think that's okay if you know that, like, all right, I'm not I'm gonna get, a cynical take on the news, and I'm gonna get some, you know, fluff thrown in there, and I'm also gonna get a takedown of some shit, like a really well thought out takedown of some shit. As long as you have to know, though, when you're doing that, it's like, I'm not getting the whole story. I'm getting what they want to tell me the whole story is. So there's just a lot of responsibility on the consumer. And I think part of that is understanding that the media companies are interested in making money, ginning up outrage, keeping viewers, directing viewers into the high profile time slots, selling ads.
Yep.
They're not, on a day-to-day basis, they're not that concerned about the depth and accuracy of their reporting. Maybe the accuracy, but I don't think they're at all concerned about the depth of their reporting. And I think that they're all driven by an agenda. So, when I consume media, it's like, I don't think anybody should get their news from television at all. Like, just as a blank, ironically, local news.
Yeah.
I feel like local news is a good place to get local news. But in terms of national news, I don't think anybody should be getting their news from any of the cable network channels ever. And I thought maybe there was hope for Sunday news shows. I'm not sure there's hope for Sunday news shows either.
Yeah.
Uh, so it becomes, but social media can be a great, great, great tool for that, because you can follow 50 different news agencies and 50 different reporters, and you can start to see, wait a second, there's an awful lot more here than I thought.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting because, what made me fall in love and trust Jon Stewart was his consistency. Like you know, the way in which, obviously the humor, and it was funny, but I think what I fell in love with him and Colbert was the heart behind what they were saying. They came across like they genuinely cared about the well-being of our country and the state of the humans that lived in it. And I think since then I've also seen kind of where they've gone with some of that. So I I started to trust them as being an authority in this space, because, and I started to trust their opinions because I I believe their hearts. I believe that they genuinely wanted what was good for everybody. And for the most part too, you know, the Daily Show was relatively consistent being hard on, left presidents just as much as they were right. Like, he tore into Clinton and Obama as much as he did Bush, and Trump was, I mean, Trump makes the night shows, the comedy shows. I mean, it's like the writers don't even have to write. It's just you
Yeah.
just show clips and laugh. So
Teed up. It's teed up every day.
it's it's you know, and honestly, ironically enough, probably a huge part of the reason we're here doing this. You know, like if it were, we are this podcast is a direct response to what's going on in our country right now, specifically the president that's in office, and our desire to kind of sort through all the mess that's come of that. So it's interesting, and like I gravitate towards obviously more left leaning personalities because I genuinely tend to trust them. Was there any have you had personalities, and I'm genuinely curious about this, like people that you've followed that you've eventually flipped on or seen uh change, or I mean, I guess like dislike, maybe somebody that lost your trust at some point that you would actually followed?
That's a great question. And I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think Jake Tapper. Like, I don't know that I was like I wasn't wearing a Jake Tapper T-shirt, but I thought he was pretty good. Uh, I've gone back and forth, interestingly, on Jon Stewart, but ultimately, like, he's one of the best, in the lot, because of
Yeah.
everything you just described. There's a lot of heart and honesty, and he knows what his role is. He knows what his position is, and he fills it with honesty. The stuff that I don't like about him is I feel like he goes really soft on some interviews when he should be hammering people.
Yeah.
Uh, but okay. Yeah, but a guy like Tapper, to me, it's why I think that you shouldn't watch TV media, and it is why I think that the trust in media is just eroded. If it could be below zero, it should be below zero with guys like that, because what he did with Biden was malpractice on the entire country. He is the prime time host of what holds itself out to be the middle ground, most responsible, most down the middle news network that there is. And he completely ignored and then buried data about the fitness of our current president to run for a new office so that he could write a book. Fuck you. Your job as a journalist is, when you have news, to fucking report it so that we can make an educated decision. Okay. Sometimes the facts have a right leaning bias, sometimes they have a left leaning bias. The facts should speak by themselves, and people can discern that as they want. And we have that happening now too, in just, if it could get worse than Tapper, it's worse than Tapper with this Olivia Nuzzo or Nuzzy and RFK deal. I don't know if you know
uh
about that one.
I haven't been following. I've seen the name come up on threads, but I didn't read into it.
This shit is bonkers bananas. So Olivia Nuzzy was a reporter for, I think, the New Yorker, either the New Yorker or Atlantic. And, she rose to some prominence. She was well known, but she wrote in 2024 probably the most damning article about Biden and his mental fitness that was released. She just took him to fucking task.
Yep.
It later came out, and she was fired, that she was having an affair with RFK Jr. Uh, and okay, she got fired, but right away you see, like, wait a second, she should not be having an affair with RFK Jr. He was running for president at the time. He was Biden's political opponent at the time, and she's writing a hit piece, and it might have been accurate, but whatever. But she's writing a takedown of Biden while she's banging one of his rivals for the office, right? And the rival, who she happens to be banging, has fucking brain worms and heroin addictions in his past, and like hides dead bears in the trunk of his car. The guy's completely crazy, and she's sleeping with him, and therefore immediately abdicating her responsibility as a journalist. So, okay, bad,
Yeah.
right?
This stuff is like just a straight TV show. Like
Straight
this
TV
is
show. It's House of Cards.
yeah, dude. This is a scripted TV show. It's
Yeah. So then she goes into Siberia for a year and comes back now with a fucking book about it. And this is the thing. And in this book now, you're starting to see little tidbits of, like, uh, There was one that came out this week where she set up Trump to have his portrait done with an artist that she knew, who she knew Trump liked. And she asked if she could go there while he was sitting for the portrait. And Trump said no, right? So
Mm.
she put a recorder in the artist's bag and had it record. And now she's hinting at, like, there's reporting coming out that, like, on that recording was some stuff about the assassination attempt in Butler that the portrait artist was like, oh, that was some weird stuff they were talking about.
Wow.
And yeah, like, and I don't know if it's true or not, but this is the press, right? And this is the press isn't talking about, wait, what's on that recording?
Yeah.
They're talking about her fucking book tour, right? She got a glow up in the New York Times magazine. Like, the disgust and disdain that I have for these people for failing to do their simple job of reporting out information, and the club and clique that they've developed around themselves, which centers around access to power and not holding power to account. We are all worse for it. And it's not a crime, but man, I feel like it should be.
I'm with you on that. And you know, like that, I feel like if you stepped into the realm of journalism in your life, like that's the world you were stepping into. It's like I want to bring the truth to the front. Like I want to shine a light on a situation and bring the truth forward. And we're seeing less and less of that, which causes us to trust media less and less. And even, you know, we've talked about this before. It's, you know, I'm just waiting for somebody to call out, you know, like like the other day when the president called that reporter for asking a question about the armed guards that were shot. Um, and he attacks her and just calls her stupid
Yeah,
repeatedly
you're a
over and
very
over again.
stupid person.
Yeah, I'm like, at what point do people step in and be like, "Whoa," like, and actually push back and just like answer the fucking question? How about that? Rather than attacking me and calling me stupid and deflecting, how about you answer the question that I just asked you because you're the president and these are the kind of questions that we ask you. So stop deflecting and calling me stupid and answer my damn question.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm just waiting for somebody to like have the courage to actually start to do this stuff because this is ridiculous.
I'll chip into the GoFundMe to build a statue of that person, right? Because these guys, they're all friends. They all travel together. So when you hear quiet piggy, right? And nobody says anything. And when they're going off on very stupid person and not answering the question, or when they are answering the question and it's just garbage,
Mm-hmm.
right? Someone at some point has just, we need like a 57-year-old, 30-year vet whose pension is vested, who doesn't give a shit anymore, and kids are out of college, to just at some point stand up and say, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you
Yep.
calling her stupid? Answer the question. And when the answer is ridiculous, be like, what are you talking about? This makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's complete crap. We all know it's crap. It's like, someone needs to stand up. And I think that there are organizations out there that still are, have the hearts of journalists, but
Yeah.
they're just pushed out. They're not allowed in because any administration, Biden didn't let them in, and Trump's not letting him in.
Yeah.
Any administration knows that they're going to get asked questions that they don't want to answer, and
Well,
it's
th-
really bad.
yeah, this is why we all flock to the nightly comedians. Because
Yeah,
they're basically taking all of this stuff and saying the thing that we wish was said in the moment. They're like
yeah,
calling out the hypocrisy of, and granted they have a little more time to do it there, but I mean even their turnaround time on some of these is crazy short. But the next part of this that I wanted to get into is just kind of our role in consuming media. I think ultimately this comes down to an individual decision making. If we really want to see change in uh, our country in general, I think it really is going to be person by person deciding what they allow to go through their eyeballs into their brains. And I remember earlier this year, where everything that was coming in on every social media platform for me was so negative, was so just overwhelmingly like corrosive and toxic. And you get in the comments and it's just people fighting and saying the dumbest stuff, meanest stuff possible back and forth to each other. There's no zero. And furthermore, I even caught myself saying similar things, like people I'd never known or met, calling them idiots for a take on something. And, it's easy to do that from behind a computer, but the people that I interact with in my life that view things differently than me, we actually have much more in common, more often than not than we think we do. And I found that we often want the same goals, just have different ways of or ideas of getting there. And there are sometimes we don't, which is a values proposition, right? But during those seasons, I've had to literally detach from social media completely, had to get off of it, delete the apps, be like, I can't for my own mental health. And then I come back in and get into it for a little bit and then back off. And it's this dance, right? Of, how much of this can we absorb and how much is worth absorbing for our just straight quality of life. So, like what role do we have as consumers in all of this? And what would you like to see happen in the future to, this doesn't get fixed, I guess. What happens? How do we make it better?
Well, I think ultimately we have a responsibility to ourselves, and it's I think it's purely individual. If you don't care about what's going on, then I'm not going to go so far as to say whatever, because you're still going to see what's going on, right? Like, I think you have to care enough to know that what you're being fed on social media, because if you don't give a shit, you're not watching CNN anyway, and you're not reading the AP or the New York Times, but you are watching social media. So you have to know that that's not a random selection of information. And then you have to be very, very careful not to go down the rabbit hole of it. But let's assume that most people are somewhat interested in what's going on. Uh, then I think the obligation becomes really difficult. And I think there should be some sort of media literacy course in understanding a few key components, and training your brain and holding yourself to account. So I'll start with that piece, because the holding yourself to account is, I think, has two main points. One, be honest about what you're consuming. If you want to consume all right wing Fox News media, go for it. It's your right. Okay. But you have to be honest and say, I want the right wing spin on things. I know I'm getting the right wing spin on things. And I'm not going to shit on the fact that there's another agency out there that gives the left wing spin on things. I'm not going to shit on MSDNC because I'm watching state media Fox News.
Yeah.
Then it's just be honest about your choice. Like, nope, they align with my priorities more. That's who I choose to watch. I understand that the left-leaning stations align with your priorities more. More power to you, and accept that that's it. But you cannot in any way, shape, or form on either side of the spectrum watch any of these channels anymore and believe that you're getting an unbiased view, that what you're watching happens to be the only truth. That's insane.
Yeah.
So we have to be honest about that aspect of it. And then we have to hold ourselves to account. Step two of that would be to say, well, what is actually going on? To have some curiosity about it. And I think there are places where you can get that. Like, I listen to the podcast Breaking Points almost every day. And sometimes I make it through a full episode. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't give a shit what they're talking about. But they're journalists. There's one from the left and one from the right. You know who they are. You know where they're coming from. And, they'll get into the politics of everything from the left and from the right. But more importantly, they are reporting on some things. They're reporting on Gaza in a way that the mainstream media is not. And
Mm.
that that can be really, really eye-opening to the fact, like, wait a second, I know a tenth, a third, you know, a minuscule amount of what's being said. So I think we have an obligation to be honest and smart about what we are consuming. And that's hard. That's a lot of work.
I was gonna say I agree with that. And further, like for me, I my entire objective with consuming, I think consuming anything, right? Outside of entertainment purposes, like there's a desire to find truth, and that's the part for me that has become the most challenging. Is and what I've also found is that over the course of, years of dealing with social media is that there when I started out, like, following any kind of political accounts, because I didn't for the longest time, and then probably, uh, end of the Biden administration, I started to or, end of the, Obama administration, when Trump started to run, I started to follow, more and more political accounts, and I tried to actually keep a healthy amount of both, like, follow some Republicans, follow some Democrats, so I had, like, some balance and nuance in my feed to give me some perspective, and I've that has gone farther and farther away. Like the gap between or being able to find any balance or any middle ground, I feel like every time I open, Threads or Instagram and I see a political story, it's like I'm stepping into a fight between a married couple that's been like married for 50 years, like, and they're just like hammering this. It's like the nuances and like the like going at each other of like, and for stuff that's been, a problem for a very long time, but the ability to find any kind of like neutral or middle ground on things I mean, it's becoming virtually impossible. It's like I almost feel like we're forced to pick a side at some point.
Well, I don't think we're forced to pick a side. I think we're pushed to pick a side. Absolutely. But
Well, I would err
what
on,
side you
meaning I would
go
err
for?
on the side I would err on the side of truth. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. And I know that truth, it can be relative at times depending on the story, but I want facts and I want to be able to decipher them in a way that that's just honest and true. And I feel like that's what's missing because like if something comes out that's that's the truth, but it's like Epstein, for example, like there is when this comes out, the truth and the ugliness of what is actually going on, which we may never actually get to see, but you know we've immediately decided to force this into the political arena of like right and left. This is the Democrats versus Republicans, and it's like, no, this is uh everybody against pedophiles. That's what this should be. Like this is where the truth should be. This shouldn't be like you forcing me to pick a side on whether I believe it's okay to be a pedophile or whether I think all pedophiles should be in jail. I'm like, no, more often than not, seeing things that should be kind of universally and collectively agreed upon, relatively neutral stories being forced to into the political sphere, and then we have to pick a side on. And
I, I,
it's just a dangerous game.
yeah, I think that this part of the conversation is properly under the personal responsibility section of the outline, right?
Yeah,
Because I think that the truth is seeking. We all have to seek facts and the truth, but we are rarely like the Epstein thing is probably the should be the easiest of any example in history. But like
should be.
most political stories are not going to be, even when you have all the facts, it's not going to be very easy to determine what the truth is because you're going to have to lay those facts over your value system.
Mhm.
Right? So if I told you that it costs more to put a homeless person up in a shelter than it does to house them in a city-owned hotel and provide drug treatment and job education, you might still have a political value system and a personal value system that says, well, I don't want to do that. I'd rather they go in a shelter, even if it costs more. And even though I'm a fiscal conservative, right? And that's
Mhm.
okay, right? The thing is that you have to make that decision based on all the facts that you can find.
Yeah.
And once you have them all, you might find there is no truth, but what you have then is what you need to, as an individual, come to your own conclusion about what those facts mean and where you should fall on them. You know, when Charlie Kirk was shot, you know, someone texted me and they said, I forget exactly what it was they said, and they were like, you know, Ted Cruz is saying the same thing as you. You agree with Ted Cruz? You know, or back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like,
Yeah.
I agree with what she's doing about Epstein, right? That doesn't make me a MAGA Republican. It just means that, you know, when I look at it all, I'm like, great, on this one, I'm aligned.
Yeah.
But we all have to have the ability to seek out the facts, enough facts that we can see where it's going, and then say, what does this mean for my own value system? And disregard where we're being pushed by our general political leanings, the general political winds, because you know, I've shifted on Israel Gaza, and I've shifted on Israel Gaza in part because I found really good independent reporting that
Yeah,
made
I
me
was
ask a
actually
bunch of questions.
that's been a big
And
shocker for me to see, because from when we first started talking about the Israel Gaza stuff to the last time we talked about it, you not, I don't want to say done a 180, but there's been a big shift in that, for
yeah,
you. That takes a
and
lot of courage, I think, as a as a person though, and especially for you being Jewish, uh to have, because I mean it's a mess as soon as you say anything negative about what's going on with Israel, especially being Jewish. I imagine you get the worst of it.
yeah, it's I don't say too much in certain
Yeah.
circles. I watch where I talk about it.
Yeah.
But you know, and certain things maybe take more courage than others. But that general idea of like, you know, as that whole conflict went on, you know, I saw some things. I was like, wait, why? Why is that? You know, why doesn't Israel allow CNN into the Gaza Strip? It's an interesting question. Or any other Western media. Like, why not? What? Okay, question. Right? Why are we withholding food? Okay, question. Right? And you start to see all these questions and you start to get new information, and it's like, okay, well, what's my value system? My value system is media companies should be allowed in so we can all see what's going on, and we should not stop all shipments of food for 60 something days. We should not starve people, right?
Hmm.
It should be as uncontroversial as Epstein. uh,
Agreed.
and then when you start to layer that all on, it's like, okay, well, my opinion now has to shift. If it doesn't shift, then I have no ground, right? I can sleep great at night with my opinion shifting about Israel in that war on Gaza. And, you know, if I know enough, it doesn't matter which way the winds around me are blowing because my feet are well planted on the soil of my moral compass and my moral values. And I know that it doesn't matter who else aligns with them. It really doesn't, right? I know that my values are always going to put me on the left side of the spectrum. And if Ted Cruz parachutes in and shares a value with me for a news cycle, I don't care. Good for him. Like, yay. It's not so black and white that now all of a sudden I'm MAGA or he's left. And I think that ultimately, that analysis and that reflection and knowing that I'm going to go off on it is key to the personal responsibility. And as an aside to that, knowing that Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and Tim Dillon are not fact-based newscasters does not, you have to know that. Otherwise, you go to them and you feel like they're speaking to your value system, and they're not, because they're not talking about the facts. You can't take what they say or how they question their guests and find any moral guidance or any fact-based guidance out of it at all, because
Yep.
that's not their job. It's not what they're interested in, and they should be more interested in it given the scope of their following. But then we have the responsibility of being like, okay, well, whatever, Rogan's guest said this, but that's just one guy and Rogan didn't push back on him at all. It could that even be true? Guess what? Google, and then
Yeah.
scroll past Gemini AI into the actual fucking articles, not the AI summary. Uh,
Yep.
that ultimately is our responsibility. It's not going to change CNN or Fox. It's not going to change the media landscape, but it will make each individual more well informed. And Thanksgiving arguments would be a lot more interesting.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think yeah, wrapping this part of the conversation up, the when we get into bias around media, and I've noticed mine has gotten worse over the years. Like I'm even the Republicans that I'm more inclined to like, I mean, to be honest, the only Republicans now that I follow are ones that have broken off and have been critical of Trump. And so I won't support anyone that's kind of not, but I think you touched on exactly what needs to happen is that we all have to kind of approach everything through a value system, like one that's a personally ingrained value system, and consume our media through that. The most dangerous people in our country are the ones that have none because they just follow suit. And there's an interesting podcast that I've seen clips of through Instagram recently, which is a son. It's this not son. He's like probably around our age, and his sister, but he has two older MAGA parents, and they interview them on camera, and they ask the parents, they say, if the president asks the military to do something unlawful, is that okay? And the parents responded, yeah, it came from the president. And then they followed that up. This family lives in Oklahoma. They're like, so if the president said that they needed to send planes to bomb Oklahoma, all of it, just get rid of it, would you support that? And they're like, well, yeah, that means that there's a reason that we don't understand. And there is just listening to that and the honesty of their responses just makes me realize, like, when you put a voice out into the world, when you start to garner attention or the interest of other people, you do have, uh, in my opinion, an obligation to what you say, and either a clarifying that what you're saying is an opinion and either solely like not based in facts, or b I am I'm telling you things that I have done as much research on to give you the facts that I can, and here it is. But like, there are people in our world that just have no values and are easily susceptible to just about anything anyone says. And so I would still like to see a little bit more, you know, a little bit more honest, in the same way that us doing this podcast, this is an opinion podcast. We're not going to flaunt it as fact. But the one thing I'm hoping that comes through in our conversations is our values.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think the reason why I hold zero, like I hold more disdain for right wing media than left wing media. Especially left wing media, like they take a step in the right direction and then they abandon ship and fail to follow up. Like, they shouldn't be asking, should a soldier follow an unlawful order? They should be asking, are these orders unlawful? Are the Caribbean strike orders lawful or unlawful? What is the backing for them? Why are they lawful? Prove it to us, government, because we're the media and we're the ones that can ask the questions. So, yeah, but the media on the right, and it starts with Trump. They have no interest in getting to facts or truth.
Yeah.
They've given up any pretense of that at all. And then what you wind up with is, just this sort of brainless automaton following that says, well, the president said we should bomb Oklahoma. And I promise you, like, I want to offline tell me the name of that podcast. I promise
Yeah,
you that if Biden were president, they'd be like, absolutely not. That order should not be followed.
correct. 1,000%. And that is the bias that we're seeing come out in our media and consumerism. And, ultimately I think the answer to all this stuff lies with the individual. But I'm still not going to let media off the hook. I think there is an onus to that. If you are putting yourself in the public sphere, you should be clear about what your intentions are. you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking a lot about the individual responsibility, which I think is real in there, but it's only real in there because the major news media has failed so spectacularly in its job.
Yeah.
Without that incredible failure at all levels, we would be able to trust that what we're hearing is accurate. But they've simply given up. The role is not that of uncovering the story anymore. They've completely given it up, and because of that, the burden shifts to us, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think there was a time that and more often than not, I see it in like the older generation, the generation that's, beyond us a little bit. So, well, we'll wrap up our conversation on the media there and get into Elwyn's, shut the fuck up for this week. What do you got for us?
So, just as always, reminder: shut the fuck up is not that somebody should not speak. Everybody has the right to their opinion, and everybody has the right to voice their opinion. That's the hallmark of a democracy. The shut the fuck up is more meant to be, had this person not spoken for an hour or a day or a couple days and thought about it first, would they have come to a different conclusion? Now, all that being said, I'm totally going the opposite way with this, and I'm going to ask someone to never shut the fuck up ever because I love what this guy does. Okay. His name is Michael Schur. We all know him because he was one of the writers on The Office. If you ever saw Dwight's brother in The Office, Mose, that's him. He's done A Good Place, and now he's done Man on the Inside. And my relationship with him goes back even further because he wrote this unbelievably great blog about sports announcing called Fire Joe Morgan, where he would just tear apart a couple times a week, just terrible, terrible sports writing. And it was funny and accurate. It was like Jon Stewart on politics, but for
Yeah.
sports writing. It was fucking brilliant. He's on social media as Ken Tremendous. And I'm thinking about him because I've been watching the second season of Man on the Inside, and it's perfect for what I need right now. Like, it's light, it's funny, it embraces exactly what it is, which is something that's light and funny, and not everything has to make sense. And there's a moral running through it, and it's put out unapologetically. Like, hey, character, you should talk to your mother. You don't want to be estranged from your mother. And it's Ted Danson, who is also in A Good Place. So these two work great together. And I knew I wanted to talk about this because I hope this guy puts out shows forever. Everything we talk about is heavy and shitty and awful. And, we need this type of stuff. So there's a scene at the end of the first episode of season 2 where Ted Danson is with a woman that he's wooing, and she's an artist, and she has this gag where she'll be talking to someone and then she'll just stop and like run away because a song popped into her mind and she has to go and do that, go write the song, right? Otherwise she'll forget it. So she
Yeah.
stops, freezes, and runs away. And so they're like, they share a first kiss on this park bench, and they're talking, and that happens. And she runs away, and Ted Danson just laughs honestly. And it's just this honest, pure laugh at the comedy of it, the show, the absurdity of the moment. It's beautiful and perfect. And I fucking loved it. That one moment, I don't know why, just that one laugh. And I was like, this guy, this writer, crushed it with A Good Place, and he's crushing it with Man on the Inside, and it's his voice running through it all. And I hope that he never, ever, ever shuts the fuck up.
There we have it. Mike Schur, don't shut the fuck up.
Do not shut
The-
the fuck up if you ever hear this.
Dude, I actually am a big Mike Schur fan as well. I didn't know about him until he started guest appearance on the Dan Lebitard show. And he would do a weekly segment on Dan Lebitard where they would come in and he would talk. He's a big baseball guy. So
Yeah.
he would talk, which that makes sense because you are too, right? So
Yeah.
it all falls into line. But yeah, dude, he's great. I actually bought his last book.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know you had one.
yeah, it's literally it's about the morality, like basically building up your own moral compass. I think I'm remembering.
Yeah,
that. It's been
his
a few
shows
years.
are moral shows, right? They're all about this very confident morality is underneath everything he does. And I don't know, I just felt like it hit me, it hit me, and I was like, man, this show's fucking great. I need this show right now. Like people needed Ted Lasso in the pandemic. I was like, I just need this for half an hour or 2 episodes, an hour a night, laugh a little, love everything about it. Yeah.
It's
So
freaking
I
great.
figured instead of raging for shut the fuck up, I'd zag for the week.
Well, that's a good one. Good. It's a good shut the fuck up this week. So, not shut the fuck up this week.
That's right.
We'll end it there, and we'll see y'all next week for the next episode of Before You Speak. Signing off.